SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Are you the type of person who's not great with change, trying to cling to the status quo as long as possible while the world moves forward at pace? If so, you're not alone, but you are likely putting your business at risk. Workplace expert Michelle Gibbings argues that calculated strategic risk-taking is now essential for organisational resilience. Michelle explains to Jeff Waters why doing nothing can be the riskiest move of all.
Often when we think of risk, we think of the downside, but risk also has an upside. And when we're thinking and looking at how the world is changing and changing at a pace that many of us have never experienced before, the risk is if you do nothing. Because if you crave stability and go, I need everything to be the way it has always been, the risk is that you get left behind. And that's the connection with the organisational resilience piece. Because for organisations to thrive in this complex, ever-changing world, they have to be prepared to take risks. But this is a calculated risk. This is a risk with thought, with planning. It's not some random thing that you wake up one day and decide to do something completely different. You want to be deliberate and deliberately thoughtful.
Okay, so there's a difference. Often risk is associated with something that comes out of the blue, whereas you're talking about strategically planning to take perhaps incremental or small risks given the changing technology and the changing economic environment. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it's, you're thinking about it in terms of it's a strategic risk. It's a strategic play. And so you are thinking about where are things changing? How might the boundaries of what it is that we do be blurring? Where, therefore, are there options that we need to explore to work out which way we go? And as you're exploring options and doing things that you haven't done before, that naturally gives rise to risk, because risk is part of an unknown environment and an unknown practice. And so if you're not prepared to take a risk, you are going to get left behind.
So that's what you mean when you say that risk is the new stability. We all need to shake ourselves up and adopt this.
What it means as well, Jeff, is that sense of people aren't really comfortable with risk. We don't like uncertainty. We don't like ambiguity. As humans, we like certainty. And when you say to someone, take a risk, there is an element of uncertainty associated with that. So there's a realism attached to this, that this is uncomfortable. But if you're a leader and you want to build and continue to operate in a thriving business that is sustainable, you want to be able to lead yourself and lead your team in a way where you create that environment where taking a risk is okay, where there are sort of the right type of culture that supports risk-taking, but risk-taking in a way that is wise, because we can all look at the stories of risk-taking that was reckless. And so this is about strategically wise risk as opposed to reckless risk.
Do you have any advice on how to go about this so that you minimise, if you like, the risk of the risk?
The key thing is to be deliberate and thoughtful about it. And so when you're going through the process of identifying what your options are, you can do things like scenario planning, where you go, okay, so what scenarios might unfold? Depending on those scenarios, what might we do to help mitigate those actions playing out in a way that is negative? You can do things like pre-mortems, where you anticipate what are all the things that could possibly go wrong if we take this path. But at the same time, also look at the upside, because if you don't look at the upside, you can get too scared by the risk and therefore, once again, do nothing. And so it's about a balance where you go, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to examine the options. I'm going to look at it through both lenses, both the upside and the downside. I'm going to prepare myself for the downside if it happens. And that's where, mitigation and all that kind of things can really help, but also lay the groundwork for my team. Because if you're a leader who punishes people when things go wrong, then no one in your team is going to want to take a risk, because they know, well, if it doesn't work out, my job's on the line.
As long as they make it clear before they do it.
Well, and that's part of the process as the leader. What are you role modeling as the leader? And also, what are the boundaries that you're setting? You hear stories of some organizations, and they're very clear about how they quarantine some of that risk. And they'll say to their team members, here's the sand pit that you can play in, that you can practice different techniques. Here's the money that we're willing to put at risk of trying something new, with the understanding that it may not have a payback, but we will be learning as we go through that process. So you need to set some boundaries and some guardrails. You can't just say to your team, hey, go forth and conquer and open slather, because
exactly.
that is reckless risk. What you want to be able to do is be very deliberate and thoughtful, create the boundaries, the guardrails, and the right type of culture so that your team feels supported as they go through these types of practices.
Now, Michelle Gibbings, this may be a difficult question to answer, but many listeners may think, small business owners may think, all right, okay, I'm brave enough to adopt or to experiment with new ideas and follow your advice in this and do it sensibly and not recklessly. But I can't think of anything that I should be adopting that's new. And so is there a risk involved there? How do I know that there are things that I should be adopting?
Part of this is, and this is one of the things I think is always a real challenge when you're running a business. You can be so in the business that you don't have time to step up, look out, and look across. And that's a really important part. And some of your listeners might have heard of that concept of balcony to the dance floor. We need to be on the dance floor as business owners. We need to be dancing. We need to be amongst the crowd. We need to understand the business at a tactical level. But we also, on occasions, need to get on that balcony. We need to look around and go, what's happening? But not just in your business. Go to the left and to the right. Go beyond your business. See what businesses that are in your area but not quite in your area, what are they doing? Because it's often on those boundaries that you learn something new. And you can see what other industries or sectors are doing and go, wow, that's really interesting. How might that apply to my area, my field? And then do some exploration. And, look, this is one of the benefits of, some of the AI tools is you can scenario plan some of those ideas with AI tools. Put the scenario into the AI tool and say, how would this play out for my industry or my sector or for my business? What might be some risks that could appear? What might be some things that I should be thinking about? What other things could I read or case studies could I look to get some lessons or some ideas about how this might apply to my work?
That's workplace expert Michelle Gibbings. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more Be Daily next week.